Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining me in Pursuit of Signal. My name is Jose Angel Castro. I'm your host and facilitator here. These first three guest episodes have me beaming, absolutely beaming. This is the third part to a short arc I'm calling Then to Now. And I'm so excited about these episodes because the three folks who have been part of these episodes, including this one, are former students and now dear friends, now family members, for sure, family members. In Pursuit of Signal is a deep dive into the impacts, the social impacts of technology on our lives today. It is the evolution of class that I taught in 2012 called My iWorld. And the three parts of this arc are with my former students who were in that class. And that class is the origin story of In Pursuit of Signal. And today I have with me, I don't even know what to say about this person. I can speak to the importance of this person in my life. Today, I have the magnificent Odduachi with me, and Odduachi is a brand strategist, a brilliant mind. We sit and have the most incredible conversations on a regular basis, and I always learn something. I'm always in awe of the man that he grew up to be. So we got some shit to talk about. We got some shit to talk about. So Then and Now is about exactly that. Then and Now. Let's talk about what we had in our shared experience then and how that affects life now. Hello, Odduachi. So happy to have you.
Jose, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for bringing this back.
Yeah.
This is definitely... It's definitely important. It's definitely relevant, all the more so, as relevant as it was way back, like over a decade ago.
Yeah, I say this often that this evolution into In Pursuit of Signal, in my mind and in my intention, I'm still talking to y'all, just as grown-ups now. Facing the challenges that a lot of grown-ups in your generation and the generation before you and the generation after you that are facing challenges in this world. And a huge part of those challenges is about your relationships to technology. So it really is a privilege to have you here and a privilege to continue the conversation. First question. In that shared experience, what do you think was the most significant part of that experience for you?
The most significant part, I think for me, we're talking like 2012, so I would have been 12. I think for me, it was a space to cultivate my voice. I think that's a big thing. I mean, I always go back to that class as like the first space really where I was able to kind of express myself in a more serious manner. And I've always been historically, like, ever since I was a kid, like, just like a bit more serious than most other kids were.
That is the truth, my friend.
So that was a space where like I was able to dig as deep as a 12-year-old could into various topics, and it was such an invigorating space. And it was also a space where like I saw that other people around me were doing it, and I think that at the time, like that, and it just inspires you to continue to do that. And it made me, it's definitely played a major role in how I've like carried conversations or presented myself, or just like how I've come across ever since then. Even after, leaving Star, going to the high school that I went to, college now as an adult, it was so foundational in me shaping and practicing and cultivating and just fleshing out the way that I think.
For those of you who don't know, the school he's referring to was called Star Education, and it was where we met. I as a teacher, he as a student, and it was this amazing little progressive private school. Very tailored learning. The beautiful thing for me was they gave me permission to teach the things I wanted to teach. And one of the things that I definitely wanted to emphasize in all my classes was respect for my students' experience. Even though a lot of people of my age would think of students as kids and not really give them the room to express themselves because of that sort of kid designation, I wanted to kind of do away with that, because I could see that Odduachi and many of my students were far beyond were far underestimated, I think, in terms of having a voice and being able to put the puzzle together. And that's what I think was the brilliance of that class. My iWorld was a Socratic circle for middle and high schoolers, where we got into this very same subject, the social impacts of technology. And that was when the iPhone had been released 5 years earlier, approximately. So I could see, and I'm sure that at the time, my students could feel how much of a game changer mobile technology was and was going to be. So my next question is, what do you remember most in terms of subject matter? Is there anything in particular?
You know, it might be because of what we're seeing now, with respect to what tech companies are ideating is like the next thing. But Google Glass stands out to me in our early conversations about what it means for basically the phone to become even more embedded in how we perceive things, even just around us. And, you know, early conversations about privacy with the camera being on Google Glass. Yeah, that definitely comes to mind, especially now with the Meta Ray-Bans having all sorts of conversation around it.
Yeah, what's interesting to me about that, Justin and I talked about that a little bit in part 2. That feeling, and we talked about that in 2012, that our technology would get closer and closer to our physical bodies. And it's funny because we're talking about Google Glass from 2012, and that technology still hasn't quite hit. You know, I think price range is a huge part of it. You know, Apple had all this trouble with the Vision Pro,
the $3,800 Vision Pro.
Yeah, you know, cost being a huge issue with that machine, especially when you're talking about brand new technology in that sphere, where you didn't have as much use case as you would want to have for something if you were going to pay $3 or $4 grand for it.
Exactly.
And you know, Meta's working on stuff now, and Apple's actually working on regular sort of glasses that I think will significantly bring the price point down. But I still wonder, I don't know, what do you think? I still wonder if it's something that people are going to really embrace as part of their everyday life.
It's interesting because I feel like I was watching a few different podcasts related to sort of like smart glasses, VR, and a theme that came up was, and this kind of speaks to how it might be positioned in the future. I don't know that I'm seeing much of this currently, or if there are attempts at it, I don't know how effective they are. But sort of the idea of, you know, VR/AR, more so smart glasses being the sort of solution to the issues that we see with smartphones, in terms of the way that smartphones capture us and are very much like a portal into something totally separate, right? The idea that you're out in public and somebody could be like this, right? How that takes you away from the immediacy of your moments, how that takes you away from the way that you engage with people.
Raising the gaze, as it were.
Raising the gaze, fixing your posture, you know what I mean? Making it so that you're not, you get the benefits of technology in terms of being able to have like added information to your field of view or being able to capture moments without missing them in the moment.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, that's a positive narrative that I hadn't considered before. I never really had a pessimistic view of it, though.
Right.
There are definitely
Yeah.
some dystopian associations with the
Of course.
technology
Of course.
being with you even
Of course.
closer than it is now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's an interesting potential future if it comes to pass, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one thing. First of all, I want the audience, if for anybody who doesn't know, VR is virtual reality, AR is augmented reality. With VR, you're using a set of goggles that cover the eyes completely, that you can't see through. And with AR, you can actually see through the material
Mhm.
that is on your face. AR augments reality in that it does visual overlays, but still allows you to see the world around you. That's one thing. The other thing is, In Pursuit of Signal is not a one-sided or one-trick pony. We're not trying to talk about being against any technology. It's more we're trying to reveal for ourselves the choices that we make in our relationships to our technology. I happen to think a lot of, I say it all the time, I love technology. I'd have every kind of machine that you could possibly think of. I make my choices very specifically, though, and very deliberately. And that's where I think we can often get into trouble, is when our machines are making our choices for us. So when it comes to AR, I think AR is a super cool concept. And that's going to bring me to what the meat of the subject I want to talk with you about today, which is super interesting because now I know what that is. But in loads of science fiction, we've seen manifestations of that type of technology. I think AR technology is really cool. I haven't yet purchased glasses. With everything, with every tool, there's the possibility that somebody's going to use it for something it's not meant to be used for. I think that's just human nature. But does that make the technology bad? No. Does it make it good? Not necessarily either. It just whether I choose to use it or not, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't assign morality to technology at all.
yeah,
Unless it's like, you know, literally a tool of mass destruction, perhaps, you know. But
right,
generally speaking, like consumer technologies, generally speaking, I think it's very much like how you use it rather than it in and of itself.
right, right.
Yeah.
I what I usually assign, when in my opinion, which
Hmm.
I always want to tell people what my opinion is. In my
Right.
opinion, when I ascribe a negative, a not good, not positive for us socially
Hmm.
label on something, it's almost entirely about the human use of it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the end user, or it's the developer, or it's the CEO,
Hmm.
or it's the whomever who's making it. If they're making it with nefarious intention,
Definitely.
then I'll have an opinion about that.
Hmm.
And we can certainly say that, not unlike a casino, the web developer is trying to keep you inside,
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
keep you inside that experience.
Yeah.
We've seen the result of that with social media, how even particular social media platforms transformed over time in order to keep you in. We can talk about whether, and what do you think? We can talk about whether or not that's good or bad.
Oh man. You, you know, casino's a good comparison. I mean, like a casino, there are like limitations on casinos
Right.
that I think are like not in place with respect to how we can use technology,
Hmm.
or too easily bypassed with respect
Right.
to how we use technology. And so, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, I have opinions about, you know, for example, like social media, and you know, like at what age in general should people be like allowed to use it.
Hmm.
I'm not a
Hmm.
fan of how different platforms right now are trying to enforce that with respect
Right.
to, like, you know, give me a picture of your ID, put down a credit card, things like that.
Yeah.
Even though that might frankly just be, that might be the only way if kids are able to bypass it in so many other ways. But then again, they might bypass that in and of itself, fake IDs, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a Pandora's box. I think once because it's interesting because you and I are talking, and we're of different generations,
hmm
and I'm not tooting my own horn, Odduachi. You can confirm this for the people, but I pay attention.
Yes, you do.
I pay
Yeah.
attention, and I try to keep up.
hmm
I think mostly because I'm a natural educator, and I
hmm
can't help guide my students, other people who come to workshops, whatever, if I
Yeah.
can't see through their eyes. And clearly
Mm.
technology is a huge part of what we live with. So I feel like I have to keep up.
hmm
Many, 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 many of the people of my generation and the generation before me have no desire to keep up, which creates a chasm between them and the other generations, which means then the younger generations know how easy it is to hide, how easy it is to
Mm.
bypass,
Yeah.
how easy it
Yeah.
is. When you think about the number of internet connected machines that the average person has in their home, I think a lot of parents don't even think of that.
Mm-mm.
They're only thinking, oh, my kid can go to his friend's house and use their internet or their computer, not thinking about the watch on their wrist or the possible burner phone that they have.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right. I mean, that's important. Actually, that's really, really important. It makes me think about like how my generation might play into that as we grow
hmm
older, as my generation has children.
hmm hmm
Um, because I think that there's always the risk or even just like the tendency, I would imagine, and you see it here and there, but more people are adopting it like with generative AI. But like certain technologies, a past generation isn't going to catch on to for whatever their
right,
reasons might be. And if that technology becomes like a mainstay for the next generation, then they're just at a loss. They are deficient in their ability to help, right?
right,
To impart wisdom on the younger
right.
generation in terms of how they use it, how they engage with it, or to monitor. And it makes me wonder
Oh, that's a big word.
how much of children's ability to bypass certain parental controls and things of that nature just comes
Mhm.
from their parents not giving enough of a fuck to stay up,
To
and
monitor.
they don't
Yeah.
view that as a part of their responsibility to keep up with technology.
Isn't that
um
interesting?
yeah,
Isn't that interesting?
especially given how damaging we know that it can be
Yeah.
and is for a lot of young people,
Yeah.
to not navigate that with a figure that has more wisdom, even if their experience is different. Like,
Yeah.
you can pair your wisdom with what you're learning about technology and try and form something new for your kids. It doesn't seem like a lot of parents are doing that or interested in doing that.
And I think part of that is just the mind-boggling speed that things move at.
Yeah, certainly.
Just that. Earlier on, your experience with the internet was on a computer that was central in your house and that was fixed. It was a fixed position.
Mm-hmm.
So supervision of that machine was implied,
Yeah.
just in terms of proximity,
Oh
that you're
yeah.
sitting at a desk somewhere where your parents could see you and see the screen as they came by or whatever.
That's sharp. That's
Yeah.
sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sharp.
And mobile technology changed all of that.
Mm-hmm.
The proliferation of laptops changed all of that.
Yeah.
But when you have a kid in a house that has a laptop and they have a mobile phone and they have a gaming system and they have a smartwatch and they have an iPad or a tablet, that's 5 paths to the internet
Yeah.
and potentially 5 paths to danger, right? I mean, we talked about that too. Y'all don't have to leave your house as kids. Y'all don't have to leave your house to get in trouble. We had to leave home to get in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are getting into life-altering trouble sitting in their bedroom on their phone at 3:30 a.m.
And nobody knows.
And nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. And I do have to say, and I'm gonna actually interview my mom too at one point
Ooh.
in this show. I do have to say that the challenge for parents must often seem insurmountable because of that, because it costs so much energy to keep up, and there's so much you would have to monitor.
Yeah.
And the irony is that same machine can quiet your child like this.
Yeah.
When you need your child to be quiet. Ain't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were presented with technology. You know, technology, what's the point of technology? It makes life easier in a lot of ways. That's the reason why we go to it. That's the reason why it becomes the default. It makes our lived experience a bit easier, at least technically. And it's easy to default to technology as your solution. Especially, I don't fault many people, you know, up until this point, because we didn't really have the data. We didn't really have the history to know what the impacts of giving a child a tablet at 3 years old would be. We're starting to see that now. And so I'm sure like parents are more cognizant of it now, more careful about it. But yeah, I mean, when the technology, but who knows when the next technology pops up that presents like an easy thing that seems innocent enough or doesn't seem harmful enough. Perhaps we have a level of reference experience to be able to get a better sense, but
LLMs are potentially that thing.
LLMs are, yeah.
ChatGPT is potentially that thing.
Certainly, yeah.
I mean, it creates a sea change in the advancement of technology and the pursuit of the advancement of technology, right? 2022 started a race, and we're still watching that race accelerate. The runners are barely off the blocks.
Yeah.
And we see how fast that's going. It's going day to day. It used to be we had to wait for technology to advance in this way a year down the line, 2 years down the line. It's advancing every day.
And those shorter wait periods produce so much larger jumps than when it took longer to get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, and keeping up is, you know, I'm learning about AI now and have been since the beginning of the summer, really immersing myself in learning. And it's hard to keep up because these new AI systems, these new entities are being born every day. So obsolescence of your knowledge now in a 6-month time span, what you learned 6 months ago can be completely obsolete.
Because so many players are trying to compete. Honestly, I mean, that's not something that I worry the most about. The amount of players that are entering and the rate with which things change. I think that makes it intimidating. And at the same time, I think that we have this impulse to feel the need to know all of it. And if we can't know all of it, it's not worth trying to figure out in a way.
That thought was the beginning of me learning.
And so I think that the intimidation that presents for people to want to learn about it for generations that aren't digitally native, certainly a barrier, but I don't think it's I don't think that should stop people, you know, and I think that a little goes a long way in terms of people's investment in trying to learn about technology. It's, you know, just playing with it, seeing what it does, realizing things for yourself. Because the amount of like AI experts, they don't know what they're talking about either half of the time. Well, and especially because of how it changes.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's the snake eating its tail, because I'm noticing a lot of AI tutorial or AI courses that are being offered on social media are in fact generated by AI. So it's super interesting.
I mean, there's something about AI being able to teach you something about AI. And at the same time, I think that that's like, a lot of what I see.
I mean, the human element of that, like humans are generating this information
via
AI that they don't actually know. That they're disseminating to other people. That's
what I think is interesting about that is how that proliferates, like the sort of like charlatan culture.
Yeah.
You know, the fake guru culture. It's just that advanced. It's that made easier. you know, give me a few bucks to be able to figure something out that you could have figured out yourself because I make it seem like I have the easy solution. I have the singular answer when that answer is probably going to be irrelevant in like 6 months.
And the crazy thing is that we haven't even reached, you were talking about data coming out about these things over time. We haven't even reached the 20-year mark from the first iPhone.
That's wild to think about.
Isn't that crazy? That's
wild. That's wild.
It's madness. And the research loop, the scientific research loop, is usually about 20 years.
Yeah, that's ooh.
And I think we're outpacing the human behavior, our society, our technological advancement is actually outpacing the ability to research those things.
Yeah, you call it the Wild West. It's never been more true.
Yeah,
it's never been more true.
Yeah,
I never thought about that. It hasn't even been 20 years since the iPhone came out.
It hasn't even been November, either October or November of 2007.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Madness.
crazy. How do you what's your approach to keeping up? I'd imagine it's more deliberate than I would even think about it. I don't really think about it, but like what's your approach to how you stay up on technology, culture, otherwise?
It's interesting because it goes to, it speaks to what I do as a profession on the daily, which is photography, and people asking me all the time how threatened I feel by AI and image generation and all that stuff. And at first, it gave me anxiety, right? It like had me like hyperventilating and shit. But then I thought about it. And I thought about the fact that, and Odduachi is a photographer as well. From our audience members, he's an extremely talented photographer. He generates images, generates as in makes photographs with a camera, captures images that I think are at once stunning and provocative and compelling images. So we have photography in common as well. And people have been asking me a lot about how do you feel about AI, image generation in AI and all this stuff. And like I said, at first it made me kind of panic a little bit. And then I thought, you know what? Like anything else, if I don't know it, then I can't figure out my place in it. So not unlike our cameras, right? If I give my camera, my mirrorless camera, if I hand it to somebody who doesn't capture images for a living, the output from that tool is going to be extremely different than mine.
Definitely.
Qualitatively and quantitatively. Generating media, content, whatever, through large language models, I think it's the same case. So if I learn to generate images, video, whatever it happens to be, through the filter of my eye, through the filter of my creative intelligence, it's going to be a different animal than the average person. And that's not me boasting about anything. That's me practicing creativity for all of my almost 56 years. So the way the creative mind works, it's going to have a different qualitative and quantitative expression and output than the average person. Using LLMs takes time. Doing it in an advanced way takes even more time. So will the everyday average person, even the people who want these images generated within creative fields or in business fields, will they want to take the time to do that? And the likelihood is no. But my approach to learning it is definitely not only on the user-based side of it. It's really understanding the foundations of how, and you'll hear me call them entities on a regular basis, beings. These are digital beings in my estimation. That is my opinion. I'm saying that's my opinion. So understanding how these digital beings are being born, why they're being born, what purposes they have, the foundational information is the most important information for me, because the end user information is changing so quickly that I think these LLMs are gonna, and agentic AI platforms are going to rise and fall, as quickly as we can blink. There will be a plateau. I believe there will be a plateau, like you were describing earlier. But I think to not understand the foundation of it is to lose, over time. Because it's moving so quickly that then we're completely lost in it. And I think if we're only thinking about how we can use it, what we can pump out of ChatGPT, then we're being taken away by the digital tsunami. We're not actually in control of what we're learning, what we're seeing, what we're doing.
Yeah. Tackling it from like a first principles perspective. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. I mean, I think thinking about it from that perspective too allows you to, it serves you better in terms of being able to anticipate, because your thinking of it is more aligned with the people that are making it than not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we talk about that all the time. I am always after the why.
Mm-hmm.
You're making this thing. Why are you making it? What is the intention behind it? What's the humanity behind it? What's the human element behind it? Even if that element is simply to make money or simply to be viral, which is an interesting term to me. It's interesting to me that specifically in the realm of technology that we use such terms as viral, as in virus, and we use terms like user as opposed to participant, because I think user speaks to the culture of addiction.
Culture of addiction, yeah. That's interesting. That's very interesting. I haven't thought about that. That's an interesting
Because nowhere
frame.
else do we use that term.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use that term in the consumption of anything else. As a matter of
And
fact,
I think
most
like
of the time we use consumer.
And I think whether like deliberately or not, it's come to pass in a lot of ways for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The way that we're users, and the way that we're talking about a culture of addiction with respect to technology. Your thought, your evolution of thought with respect to generative AI and photography, I think it's interesting. And of course, I think about that as well, just in terms of the role of AI or our perceptions of AI and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me because, we take this all the way back. Like AI has been here for a very long time. It was well before ChatGPT. The technology was beating human grandmasters at chess.
Yes.
Right. And we didn't necessarily care like that back then, if we even knew. It seemed to be like a much more niche field of interest, and one that we were impressed by because of what it meant for us positively in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with the rise of generative AI, late 2022 until now, and how that's become more and more prevalent in people's lives, like when LLMs came out, when ChatGPT was launched to the public, I think it's interesting because that presented a threat to writers first.
Right.
In their minds. And writers are some of the most prominent purveyors of the way that we think. Mm-hmm. Especially like journalists, right? And I feel like a lot of the framing of technology, a lot of the framing of generative AI has come from that point of view. And it absolutely makes sense that coming from that point of view, we would have a much more negative connotation, a much more skeptical connotation of it, or a dismissive one, all of it really, when it's coming from a person or people or a body of people that feel threatened by what it can do and what it might come to do in the future, or feel that it's incapable of doing what we can do. And it's interesting to hear how you think about it in terms of it being another tool. Because generative AI to me is not unlike past innovations that made things easier. Photoshop. You know what I mean? Photoshop, the shift from analog photography to digital photography. Digital photography, digital cameras to phones. It goes back. There's always been these shifts that have threatened livelihoods, that have threatened the ways in which people did things, painting to photography, And it's an interesting thing. It's interesting to hear you say uh, it's about the person that's going to end up using it, because in a lot of ways we see that now. Like, we don't find AI slop appealing at all. You know, we might
Right.
find, and we grow more sensitive, I think, to the way in which people use AI in, I don't want to call it art personally quite yet, but like generation of aesthetics, let's say.
Of creative aesthetics.
You
I like
know?
that. Yeah.
But it just, it just makes me think about, I know a lot of people that are like for it, are against it, and for it just in terms of like, this is just where we're going. There's no use really
Right.
like
Yeah.
fighting what will be.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would be at a loss if I tried to do that. And the people that are against it, they're against it on more principled, for principled reasons. Um, and I think a
More
lot
about
about
morality.
like,
Yeah.
it's a morality that they assign to it for sure. And I think that there's conversations to be had there,
For
because
sure.
with any new thing comes like the risk of people using it in ways that are just like
Shady.
using it in shady,
Harmful,
or
nefarious, all of the above.
nefarious, lazy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And at the same
Yeah.
time, like for example, the whole Studio Ghibli slop thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar
Mm-hmm.
with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
pissed me off. Like I hated that. I
Yeah.
hated that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, I'm still playing with thinking through what I think about the concept of artist theft with respect to AI. I think I have less reservations about it when it comes to photorealistic image generation than I do, uh, more hand drawn
Right.
or
Painting,
or
drawing.
painting, drawing,
Yeah.
that sort of image generation, just because of the reference to styles comparatively. And it's
Yeah.
not to it's not even as a photographer, it's not to demean photography. Like photography is cool to like steal and copy, right? Like if we're talking about an exact one to one, generate an image of this in the style of Saul Leiter,
Right.
get good maybe before want to do something like that. I recall some AI generated image won some fine art competition, and that had a big brouhaha
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
was last year.
I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about like how someone integrates AI into their practice. So for example, how a photographer might then use their image and then do something with AI to affect it like they would Photoshop,
Right.
or even how, a cinematographer or videographer, there've been some crazy music videos
I've
recently
seen
that
some cool stuff.
have integrated AI and like very,
Yeah.
very like this is I feel like this is adding to the richness. This is furthering an artist's ability to realize a vision, an
Yeah.
image in their head. But then
Yeah.
also like, I don't know how I feel about neglecting or prohibiting the use of AI as a creative vehicle for people that have creative visions that they can't execute just because they aren't experts at the myriad of
Right.
things that they're
Yeah.
interested in.
Yeah.
Is it
Well,
and or the means by which it's cost prohibitive to do so? Like
right.
if I
Right.
am I going to tell a 15-year-old that using this is bad because of all the reasons why it's been ascribed as being bad, but they have a creative vision that they want to execute, and they simply don't have the money to hire the photographers that they want to, the videographers that they want to. They don't have the time to learn the myriad of skills that would be required, or they simply can't do it as one person. And
Right.
something about that feels like not right
Hmm.
to me.
When I think about it, that's the DJ argument, isn't it?
It's very much like DJing. It's very much like
Yeah.
sampling
Yeah.
and the history of hip hop.
Because people generally don't, well, many people, you can't say this of professional DJs, but many people
Yeah.
don't view a DJ or an electronic music producer as a musician because they
Or a
feel
hip
like
hop artist at the time.
because they feel like they're sampling or not, they might not be generating the music, the notes on the score themselves. They may be puzzle making, right? Which is often
Curating.
the case, right? Curating is a good way to put it. But at the same time, when you get to an event, or you go to a restaurant, or you go to a happening where that DJ really knows what they're doing, they're moving you like Mozart. So there is an argument there.
Not to poo-poo it, but like only focusing on modern writers, never going to the classics, being a photographer, only focusing on the imagery that you see on your Instagram Explore page, never looking at photographers of the 20th century. You could apply being a musician, poo-pooing or just not knowing about the music of the past. But really, like, I just find that a lot of my favorite creatives are creatives that have a rich body of experience or referential, a relationship with past work as well.
Yeah.
Modern, keeping up, staying on the avant-garde, but also having this catalog that they go to becomes so important, and it becomes more interesting because a lot of people aren't familiar with them. And I think in a lot of ways, all of this goes to the idea that one's ability to use AI is as inappropriate or appropriate as they would pursue perhaps another craft. I think it's because AI has not plateaued yet that I just don't have a solid, a determined opinion on it quite yet. Yeah, I don't think it's possible.
I think it's folly for us to immediately assign good or bad, right or wrong, an end game opinion, because it's not there yet. It's not
there yet.
And I don't think it's ever going to be finished per se, but it hasn't gotten to a saturation point where we can more easily understand it, more easily understand the use of it, how our relationship is going to grow or not grow with it. We're not even close to being there. And I think for the average person, that abstract concept of the width and breadth of what's happening in the advancement of technology, it's unfathomable. It stops you in your tracks. You know, I mean, you don't want to think about it. It's one of those things. I don't want to think about it because it's too much.
Yeah.
You know?
Or they don't want to entertain it because of how bad they think it could be. There's a negative impression that exists with respect to technology today.
Yeah.
And there's a sentiment that the further we go, the more far gone we become. The further we go, the more impossible, the more difficult it becomes to go back. Should we need to, it's not even worth the risk of seeing where this goes. Right. Even if there might be something good on the other side, because of the negative impacts today and the negative impacts of those other things that we thought would be fine in the future. Yeah. What the trends have shown me historically is that neglecting it, not paying attention to it, not doing your part to stay on top of it, it just pushes you in a more negative place in the future. The fears of AI replacing us, which there are a lot of in the work that I do and in photography, so it's definitely not, it's not like I don't think about those things, but I don't think the solution to it, I think that the only solution to it presently is keeping up and being open to adapting and being open to the pivot. At the very least, it might just be my general sense of optimism, my general faith in humanity, my general impression that that things get better over time rather than worse.
Right.
There are shifts that are going to hurt so many people. I might be among them, right? But the way in which I might be able to protect myself from or be able to minimize the negative trench, right, when I'm in it, is like knowing how to use it, you know, becoming a director of AI perhaps, or positioning myself above the point of replaceability in terms of what AI is doing functionally. You know, like product photography might be up. Product photography might be up. Fashion photography would probably be harder to touch. Well, let me creative direction might be even harder to touch from that, you know?
Right. Well, let me tell you this. In terms of my profession, I can be a photographer at this point, or I can learn other things that turn me into a photographer media specialist.
Mm-hmm.
One, I stick to my guns on photography. I don't stray from it. I hold on to it for dear life. The other, I learn about image generation, video generation, prompting, AI, and I fold that into what I might be able to offer my clients. Would it be more attractive for a client to have somebody that they know has a foundation in photography and who understands composition and color and light generating for them than somebody who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Just wondering.
Similar to the way that analog photography has reemerged as sort of like this popular niche in photography, how much more valuable does pure human output, pure human execution become
Right.
as AI becomes more pervasive? I don't think that that sort of a thing. I don't think that human creativity loses its role or loses its place. I think it becomes perhaps like less widely able to be commercialized, but I still
Interesting.
think it places, it becomes a valuable position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
We like things that we think it took work for somebody to do, right? There's a value in that.
Yeah. If you remember back in 2012, that class was quite predictive, and we talked about a lot of things that have come to fruition today. And what's interesting, because it's interesting to me to connect the dots between where we are now and how we're behaving now and the choices that we're making now to what might come in the future. And I just had this sort of flash of a time where in this time period, we're wondering whether things are AI that we're looking at in our social media feeds and in the news, whatever, and we're wanting some sort of designation to be put on it, kind of like parental controls or parental warnings that were put on certain types of music. We're wanting, maybe there'll come a time where the opposite will be true, where we'll start to put labels on things that were actually generated by human beings.
That's how you would become irreplaceable. That's how you create a moat around yourself, is the fact that people aren't just interested in what you do because it looks pretty. They aren't just interested in what you do because it's educational. They're interested in what you do because it's coming from you, and you're able to do all these things that they find value in, particularly because it's you. And I think that both of those things come to mind as like potential solves for people.
Yeah.
Especially in like creative fields with respect to generative AI and just the progression of technology, community,
Yeah. And that we start to think about, even from an intellectual property standpoint, human stamping things.
Mm-hmm.
I've never said that before, but it's interesting and makes sense to me.
Also, and this is a perspective, that comes from Micah, because we've had
We have a
conversations
mutual
about
friend
this.
called Micah, who is a very incredible creative person
And a philosopher. Um, he brought up how another point in terms of like the endurance of human property, human creativity, human output, um, is the fact that like it it speaks to, it's a wild take. It speaks to what's incentivized on platforms now, and what garners the most attention now is negativity and hate, frankly.
Yeah.
And the fact that for our worst natures, it becomes less interesting to bash, hack, hate, demean, disparage something that wasn't made by a person. It was an interesting take that I'd never heard before. The idea that AI, as it becomes more capable of doing things, handling like legal work or financial work, will we want it to? Because then who will we hold responsible for when things don't work?
Right.
Who's liable?
Right.
I think there's something similar going on in terms of, hate watchers and trolls. How entertaining will things be for them if what they're engaging with is not personal?
Can't feel what you're trying to make them feel.
Can't feel what you're trying to make them feel.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Holy shit, Micah. That's super interesting.
That might be a moat in and of itself too. The fact that when people want to talk shit, they want to talk shit to a person.
To a human. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it would kind of neutralize those exchanges, wouldn't it?
Or just like make them less
because comment threads thrive on people hating on other people and trying to bait other people into arguments, not debate, but arguments specifically. I want to transition. I want to talk a little bit about the relevance of science fiction in this discussion, because clearly we have creators and writers from long ago who were making material and expressing themselves in ways that back then we could not fathom coming to fruition, but are now realities. I'm amazed by this. I'm amazed that we are seeing this convergence of science fiction and fact in our physical world.
I feel like we have two sides of it when it comes to science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the two sides that are interesting for us to consider in our reality is positive futures when it comes to science fiction and more dystopian futures when it comes to science fiction.
Right.
Novels like 1984 come to mind with obviously with the dystopian side, and the idea of surveillance state, and the idea of technology being used to control a populace. And then on the positive side, frankly, no examples come to mind, but I know that they exist.
The Jetsons. That's before your time.
Yeah. Well, no, I've seen the Jetsons, and the Jetsons was actually the image I had in my head. Couldn't come up with the name. But what I get from things like the Jetsons or other sci-fi stories where sci-fi is more so the setting than... Oftentimes it feels like it's more so sci-fi being the setting rather than like the theme through which we're observing something to warn us about the future. We see like sci-fi gives us a look into the future in terms of what technology could look like for better or for worse.
Right.
And I think that I have a mentor that wrote about this, how sci-fi can serve us in terms of charting that future for ourselves as a collective. To your point about Star Trek and the phone, I don't know where else we get these ideas or impressions of what technology is going to be. I don't know where they get these ideas from other than science fiction to create these technologies in the way that they present themselves and appeal. Have you seen it's like an AI robot. It was like a housekeeper.
Neo.
That comes from fiction. That is we're realizing things that we read in books and saw on television.
100%.
And then we're also able to observe things negatively that also come from fiction, that come from books, movies, television. So it's a very interesting lens to look at things through.
Yeah. And
I think that might also have something to do with why I maintain an agnostic, leaning positive perspective. Is because I definitely want to be aware of the potential negative futures, but I'd rather lean into the positives. I'd rather see the positives realized than the negatives.
Yeah. No, I find it interesting. It's difficult for me to think of examples where the storyline goes human meets robot, robot becomes part of human's personal life, human lives happily ever after. It's very difficult to think of any of those types of examples. Films like iRobot, where we're seeing the Tesla robot looks an awful lot like the fictional robot in iRobot, these sort of humanoid iterations of robots. There's a lot of stuff coming out of China and Japan right now where they're beginning to create robots that look like humans as opposed to simply being humanoid. Like this Neo doesn't look like a human, moves like a human, walks around like a human, but is bipedal, but doesn't look like a human. We certainly see, like the show that I recommended to you recently called Foundation. In that reality, there is an AI robot who is the last of her kind because her kind were banned and destroyed centuries before. So that's kind of a reverse engineering of, we're looking in one direction and that's looking backwards in the other direction. One of my first experiences with that sort of thing, where I had enough agency to experience it in that way was The Terminator. Talk about the dystopian viewpoint of that. Things like Blade Runner. Blade Runner is another one it's an interesting place in the journey of synthetic digital beings who are currently being eradicated. And that's where the story begins, is in the elimination of these beings and their desire to not be eliminated. But the tie between our imaginations as human beings and how we can take those imaginings of other people and turn them into physical things is fascinating to me.
I feel like a very, very relevant tie to what you're saying now, but then also to the general landscape as well
Mm-hmm.
with generative AI. The film Her comes to mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And science fiction does that in how it challenges how real the technologies that we have can be real,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting one because Her explored what felt to me like both a positive and negative future.
Just a real
Just
one
a
to me.
future.
Just a real one,
Yeah, just a
just
real one.
a
And
real
I mean,
possibility.
we're seeing aspects of that today,
Certainly.
and
There are very clear examples of that right now
uh,
with ChatGPT and real humans.
yeah, it feels weird to me how it exists today compared to how it's portrayed in the film. Just because I don't, personal opinion, don't quite think that the artificial AI, just call it that because of for common
Yeah.
consensus, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
how the way that AI is now doesn't really feel like what they were getting at with Her in terms of how real technology, the artificial intelligence was in that movie. But I don't
Yeah.
think that that's like beyond the realm of possibility. And I don't, the reason why I think that uh people are getting in relationships, falling in love with their devices, with their
Yo,
software
yo,
now.
yo. We are
It's so
steps from it. We are
yeah, no, I
steps
mean,
from it.
in certain fringes we're already there,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. When there's a recent story of a 17-year-old,
Damn.
17-year-old who was convinced through their relationship with a chat GPT that they were being abused. It initially started because their parents took away their phone and the AI told the kid that's abuse. You should report it to your school. The kid reports it to the school. The school determines that that's simply a matter of discipline between parent and child. The child tells the AI that. The AI says the school is against you. They're conspiring with your parents. You need to now take this a step further and go to the authorities, Protective Services. That step is taken. Child Protective Services determines this is not abuse by any stretch of the imagination. This is normal discipline between parent and child. ChatGPT says, everybody's against you. You need to run away. And the child runs away.
Yeah.
Again, the human factor kind of determines how the depth of that relationship, right?
There goes, yeah.
The vulnerability of that mind, the isolation that it would take to convince, for the AI to convince the human of such things. That's the human factor, which speaks to something that you and I talk about quite a bit, which is choice, which is the ability to make choice, the ability to think critically, the ability to, right? All of those
Yeah.
things that, in my opinion, we have surrendered to these relationships with our machines in a lot of ways, whether it's people using ChatGPT as a therapist or for dating advice, essentially making it the buffer between one human's interaction with another human. So it's like, we're 2 months away from being able to interact with AIs the way that the character in Her did. We're right here. We're right on the cusp of it. When MIT has built a model, an agentic AI model that can write its own code in order to continue learning so that it doesn't get stopped by not having enough information, you're steps away.
Yeah. I mean, I heard this recently, like one of the bottlenecks with respect to AI right now is that the way that it learns isn't quite like a person
Right.
in how it's being trained on a given set of information
Yes.
on the internet. And at this
That has
point,
limits.
I'm pretty sure it's all of like the internet's data, but still humans, the way that we learn, it's, we learn through the internet. But like, I mean, we put the stuff on the internet, but like with the way that we come to gain data is much broader, much more immersive,
Organic.
organic.
I just said there's a TV show that I really love, and one of the characters is constantly saying, "It's organic," which I just think is funny.
It feels like a tech term.
Yeah.
Um,
Organic.
yeah, the way that we
I'm writing that
the
down.
way that we learn, it's interesting to me to consider how AI changes when it can learn the way that people do, more immersively, seeking its own information, engaging in the world to learn things. I think that you're seeing a little bit of that,
Mhm.
and perhaps that might be what's going on in terms of with like Atlas, the ChatGPT browser, and other browsers that leverage AI, trying to see how people are using their devices to engage with the internet, and perhaps that becomes a grounds for AI to mirror how we engage on the internet to continue to learn itself. How does that translate to when AI becomes something, in our smart glasses or whatever it might be? How can it learn in that realm?
When it's walking around in physical bodies, like in robotics.
Yeah. How does it get to that point? What does it look like at that point? It's I mean, the story that you told about the 17-year-old, I mean, that's one of the things. That's one of the things to look out for, right? That's one of the negative futures I'd say that we need to be aware of. It's also interesting to think about how we get to the point where that is possible as is.
Yeah. No, it's a consequential present because
Yeah.
we are surrendering so much of, and that, that kind of speaks to the okay boomer, which I'm not a boomer, but that kind of speaks to the okay boomer thing, because my generation and the generation before me often talks about all of these socially initiated lessons that you learned that facilitated critical thinking, that facilitated being able to delay gratification, that facilitated it takes work to live mentality. There are no easy roads. The fact that, and it's still true today, whether we want it to be or not, we learn through discomfort. And if you remove the discomfort, you remove the ability to learn in a lot of really significant ways. So we become more and more vulnerable to making those types of choices when we don't know what questions to ask. We don't ask questions at all. We are taken away by the digital tsunami without being able to corroborate anything, without thinking about looking things up, by accepting the first answer that we get as the answer. Then it becomes super easy for our relationship with our technology to go awry. Super easy.
And to the point at the very beginning of the conversation, when older generations that have that capability, have that learned understanding, aren't engaging with the current technologies in a way to where they can empathize with younger generations, or don't come across as believable to younger generations, for whatever wisdom they might have, to be disregarded as just okay boomer.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Even that sentiment is driven by the same thing, right? Because for me, the practice, and I talk about practiced and unpracticed to sort of remove the judgment from it. When you're unpracticed at deductive reasoning, critical thinking, delayed gratification, human connection, then okay boomer comes out like that. It's easy to dismiss.
Yeah.
And then, but the consequence of that is that you lose those lessons. Those lessons are lost entirely. And older generations are constantly talking about these kids today, and they've always done that.
Every generation talks about the
Every
next
single
one.
one. But the gaps between Gen X, my generation, certainly boomers, and millennials is huge. And millennials still had grew up with many of the sort of analog. They're the transition generation. They're not the digitally native generation, right? And on top of that, when you see how Gen Xers and baby boomers fall for scams all the time, which is human engineering, most of it, 90% of that is human engineering. It's not somebody breaking into your stuff.
Yeah.
When you see how they believe generated images on their social media as though they're real, and the average Gen Zer would be like, that's that's the most AI thing I've ever seen in my life. You see how powerful it is, because we're talking about people who have had decades and decades and decades of practice at deductive reasoning, at these sort of emotional connections, and that can go out the window with these very powerful tech generated experiences.
Yeah.
And people will say, I would never have a personal relationship with, an AI. But wait until you have a robot in your house that can fold your laundry for you and can listen to your woes. Then tell me how much you would never. It's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to be black and white, either or. It's all and.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's interesting. There's so many thoughts on that, like what we are practiced at versus unpracticed at, and the things that, for example, like Gen Z, Gen Alpha are practiced at by comparison. But then also like to the idea of how we got here. How is it that a person is able to become infatuated with engagements on ChatGPT? Well, like, how was it that somebody was able to become infatuated with somebody across the world sending letters to each other? How was it that somebody was able to become infatuated with somebody sending emails? How was it that online dating became a prominent vehicle in which people are meeting each other when that was a big taboo, even in the time that I was alive? And I mean, I think what we cling to is the fact of, well, it's a human, and to a certain extent, I think that's true.
Yeah,
but I also think that's
that
like
would be my point. Even if I fell infatuated with somebody across the world writing letters back and forth, I know that there's another human writing that letter back and forth.
Exactly. And that's how I see it. But that is the ways in which we become able to connect more distantly. I think provide a pathway for that kind of for somebody to engage with an AI. And at that point, as we've been discussing, like fiction gives us a pathway where we really come to question the humanity of artificial intelligence. You talk about Blade Runner, I talked about Her. There's this video game, Detroit Become Human, that comes to mind. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I don't know it.
It's very similar, I'd imagine. Yeah, it's very similar. It presents this future not too far. I think you and I will still be alive. Would have been alive in the when this story was set. But like, we have androids now, very human like androids, very human, like they're indistinguishable, right? I think the game is set in Detroit, and it's like a player choice based game. Make certain choices. You have several paths that it could go down. And it presents like a positive potential, negative potential. And what it is exploring is really like the humanity of these androids. And it's putting these androids in situations that I think people would be very uncomfortable with, in part because of how they look. Like, it's going into some very like, people are abusing their androids. How do we feel about abusing, if you want to call it? You know what I mean? There are brothels with androids. There are people that are raping android. Like, how do we feel about that? And if that sort of a thing evokes responses in us, which I think it does, if that evokes negative or disgust responses in us when we see, and maybe empathy. It's just because if it does it inspire empathy in us. And the game is sort of, I think you would find that most people playing that game feel a sense of empathy, feel disgust when some dude is beating on their robot, when some dude is getting a robot that looks a certain way because they have a certain thing, and they want to abuse a certain type of person, or they're getting a robot because they want to do certain things that they can't do with certain people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's presenting that challenge, and I think that the way fiction is giving us ways to have a perception or have an understanding or have a sense of what could be possible, whether it's conscious or not. I think then translates to certain people to extend that to technology today. But the pathway
Westworld is another universe like that. On if you I mean, I'm not plugging anybody, they don't sponsor me in any way, but that was an HBO series that was a book first called Westworld, and it was actually the remake of a film that was made with Yul Brynner back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And we've cracked the code of creating androids that are
Yeah.
indistinguishable from humans, and have created basically this giant adult theme park
Hmm.
where you can pay to go into this West world and have all of these experiences where you can interact in storylines with these androids. And obviously it brings out the basest instincts in humans who want to go to this world to be debaucherous as you can possibly
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Um, so it speaks to it also speaks to the machines eventually becoming conscious,
Hmm. Yeah. You see that in Detroit as well.
and that's also part of Blade Runner. All right, that's also
Yeah.
part of Blade Runner. So this
Yeah.
this and in Blade Runner, for instance, I felt an incredible amount of empathy toward these, and they're completely fictional characters
Yeah.
uh, who were humanized in my eyes because they were being hunted down and they didn't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's the point of these like these stories, these fictions embed that sensibility in us, or perhaps just evoke a sensibility that was already there. And it
Yeah.
presents us with these scenarios to come to understand or extend humanity towards things that we think we're above extending humanity to.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I mean, I think that's the interesting thing about film and cinema, the way that it challenges us. And you see in other countries, Japan comes to mind, the whole renting a person scene,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
rent a girlfriend, rent a boyfriend, rent a mom, rent a dad, a walking buddy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think all of that comes about because of, you know, certain particular set of circumstances in that society, but I don't think that any other society is above that sort of a thing. And we already see globally, like idolatry is a concept in and of itself, and the parasociality that we have with
Yeah.
like public figures.
Yeah.
All these things are entirely possible. It doesn't
We're
then sound infeasible at all to me that a person can develop an infatuation with AI as
we're
much as
already
I
there. We're
yeah,
already there.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not a question. It's not a question of it being futuristic and as a concept. We're already there. It won't be very long before you see people. The first case of somebody wanting to marry a robot, for instance, an
I
AI
feel like
robot.
that's already happened. I feel like I've already
We're
seen that.
we're not that far from that. I mean, if
And or
if it
legislation
hasn't
banning
already
it.
happened, I mean,
Yeah.
we know of people steps before this who are married an anime character,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
it's not mine to judge. I mean,
Yeah.
I can consider what I would do or what I wouldn't do. And again, that's about our own individualized reality, because clearly our collective reality is beginning to fragment for many, many reasons, right? But as we start to think about the way that we have, and that's why my audience will hear this from me a lot. And if you've listened to other posts that I've had, you'll hear me say this a lot. This is about our relationship with technology, because we're no longer talking about tools in the way that we use these things in our reality, because they have personal buy-in, they have
Yeah.
emotional content. Just go to pick up somebody's phone who didn't give you permission to pick up their phone, and you will find the very emotional content. Go to give a little child an iPad and then take it away from them without saying anything. You will see the emotional content. You will see the depth of our emotional attachment to these things. So we're already there in terms of where we are socially isolated, where we are unpracticed, becoming increasingly unpracticed at human connection.
Yeah, that's the thing. The more distant we get, like what we are practiced at is being able to connect with distance, is being able to connect the further and further our connection, our very physical connection to a person is. And that I think lends itself towards a person's ability to become infatuated with technology. And increasingly, as technology becomes more human, it's that just becomes all the more entrenched. And I think that like
Attractive.
what we see now is that very much feels fringe. I think to the vast majority of people, it's kind of like, oh, whoa, let's stay away from that, right?
Yeah.
And
Until
again,
it's
like
not.
it's not, and
Until it's not.
and that's the thing, right? Until it's not, because so many different things, like online dating was like, you wouldn't tell anybody that you met somebody on
Yeah.
the internet,
Yeah.
you know, and now
Now
that
you
becomes a very
brag about
for
being on Grinder. Yeah.
and you know, for people that don't, some people, it's just a comparison that makes me more cognizant of what could be possible.
Hmm.
And I think it's a matter of, I think when we neglect that, we make it all the more probable that that outcome that we don't want to happen happens
Right.
collectively, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that to the point about like futures, I mean, that's just something to consider. Like if it's fringe now, like what are we gonna do such that such that like my children or my grandchildren
Yeah.
get hitched with a
Yeah.
person?
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know?
one of the major symptoms that I think we see of this lack of practice at human connection comes from our, our use of smartphones.
Mhm.
Comes
Absolutely.
from self-facing cameras, comes
Absolutely.
from putting this between us and many, and for some of us, most of our actual human experiences.
Yeah.
Comes from sitting in a room with 5 people and none of the 5 people are actually interacting with each other except through this, right? And it's completely separate context. So yeah, the human factor, the human emotional behavioral factor.
That's the thing to be concerned about too. If I'm not mistaken, Gen Alpha is going through sort of like an offline thing right now, and I think Gen Z is having some of that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
For sure.
just a
I'm seeing that a lot.
gravitation
Yeah.
towards real in-person experiences, and there's this craving for it. I think because we are aware of what could be on the other side, and whereas in the past, like it was just that was just the norm. That was just what it
Hmm.
was.
Hmm.
No easier or harder. Like you wanted to meet somebody, you had to see them in person. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Having a conversation on a phone on your home landline, much less compelling than having a FaceTime call. For the fact that you can't see somebody face to face, but also
Right.
like, what if your mom hops on the line? What if your grandparent, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the technology's made it easier for us to, you know, have these senses of connection in distant ways. But I also think, you know, the pandemic for a lot of people was as isolating as it was incentivizing to get back in touch in a lot of
Right.
ways.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
remember going from, you know, sophomore, junior year in the pandemic to like my senior year on campus, and how vibrant that was. Like how
Yeah. Yeah.
the way
How
it fueled
excited people were to see each other.
everybody,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, in a way
Yeah.
that the end of freshman year was like, all right, peace, I'll see you. You know what I mean? You don't really know you never really appreciate it until it's
Until it's
deprived of
gone.
you. And then you
Yeah.
also have a generation but what we're getting towards is like generations where it's like we don't even, the reference experience, the reference points that we have are just not as solid, the opportunities for experience, whereas in your generation all you had was linking up with people, you
Yeah.
know, that was 100% of your engagement, 99 whatever.
Right.
It's becoming smaller and smaller of a percentage for people.
That's so interesting. It's blowing my mind. You're blowing my mind right now by reframing Gen Z's experience, even millennials' experience in the pandemic, because this is just potential, right? This is just puzzle making. You hadn't had the experience of being practiced, you generally,
Generally.
generationally,
Yeah,
generally,
yeah, yeah.
hadn't had the same experiences as Gen X and and baby boomers of cultivating those human connections from a very young age.
Mhm.
But you have this major, super painful, super impactful experience of the pandemic where you're deprived of
Mhm.
the ability to connect with other humans in that way, so much so that it makes you understand the importance of connecting with other humans in that way.
Yeah. I think that's
That
what
it
a lot of people
affects
learn.
that it affects the consciousness of that generation, those generations, in such a way as to kind of potentially reset what you would teach your own children. I had an example of this just
Ooh.
last night.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
No,
Yes, you see it?
that part that part I hadn't thought about. The
You
fact that
see
that
it?
experience informs how we would approach
You
bringing
see
up.
it?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
How you
yeah.
would approach it in contrast to your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
You see it, right? You see what I'm seeing,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
As a potential outcome.
There's a potential future.
Now, anecdotally, I'm going to give this example, and it certainly doesn't necessarily work generally, but I have seen this in my life in more than one example of it. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
you can see it, maybe you can look around for it and we can talk about it again. And maybe anybody listening to this can look for this as well. I have 3 great nieces who I'm so tickled to say they call me Super Tío. Um, because in Spanish, the term for great uncle is tío abuelo, which means uncle grandfather. I didn't want that. So I encouraged them to call me super tío. Now, these 3 jewels of my existence, we're finding, especially the youngest one, who is 1 year old, she shies away from the camera. If she's doing something that she's enjoying and mom or any adult picks up a camera to film her or photograph her, almost without fail, she rejects it. Isn't that fascinating?
Because I just know my reference experience of kids younger than me
Mm-hmm.
when I was, I don't know, 12, 13, 10, whatever it might
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
And they would want to grab, like they would want to be in the shot. They would want to be on the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They would want to pose. You know, they would
Mm-hmm.
want to pose. They would want to perform for that camera.
But it
Right?
mirrors culturally where we were at.
Correct.
Much less
Correct.
skepticism, much less fear of where it could be, much less experience of the
Much
harms.
less experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting to me that that might be the case. Back in 2012, I asked the question to your class, and I would like you to answer this question for. Back then, I asked, if you have children, would you allow your children to use technology in the same way that you were given permission to use it?
To your point about making it general, I think that the way that I was brought up with technology was a especially thoughtful and positive one.
Right.
And so, but I don't know that I would do it the same only insofar, only because of how much more pervasive those technologies might be than the ones that I grew up with and the ways in which I was allowed to access the technologies that I grew up with. You know, I didn't get a smartphone until I was 13, 12. I had a like a boo boo. It was one of those smartphones where it's like so brick you wouldn't use it.
Right.
You know, when I was like 12.
It didn't do nothing. Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like, okay, so this is basically just like having the Nokia brick.
Right.
To
Right.
me, I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I can't even, the internet is so slow. I can't even really the screen is so not usable. And then I got an iPhone like the year later. And I think that just the way I was brought up, I was just like not using technology and I wasn't going to get sucked in like that.
Right.
I wasn't on social media until high school. And even then,
Not very
um,
much. You
so
know, I
yeah,
remember I remember your use of social media at the time back then. By the way, audience, Odduachi and I have known for each other for an awfully long time, and we've been really integral in each other's lives for pretty much the entire time that we've known each other. So we
yeah.
very much have experience with each other's experiences in terms of technology and the way that we view things.
So I think that like I would want to mirror that sensibility such that perhaps my children can just make good choices, can just have that sensitivity younger.
That's the
And at
answer.
the same
Yeah.
that is the core, frankly, you
Yeah.
know. But I wouldn't be again. I would absolutely be inclined to, and I think that I might be we talked about this earlier, like being digitally native. Perhaps I won't be as removed. I might be in certain if there are certain technologies I don't know about, but I'm
Hmm.
inclined
Hmm.
to stay up as you are, such that I can know what they're using, how they're using it, how it's used, and determine the appropriateness of it. There are a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do or use with technology that at the time I was honestly fine with. in many ways, and in certain ways, I'm like, yo, like chill.
Yeah.
Like I'm good for it,
yeah.
and maybe I was good for it, but maybe I wasn't.
Or maybe you
You
wasn't.
know,
The fact is that your mom had guardrails that she
and
wasn't willing to compromise.
that I think that plays into maybe I was good for it because I didn't have access to it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I would have the sense that I was fine because I wasn't fucked up by virtue of being on the technology. You know?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would want to mirror that parenting style for the modern for what would then be contemporary.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right.
And it would mean probably a different level of usage and a different engagement with the technology based on what is more prominent and more dominant then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long answer to your question. I feel like my answer is
but we got there.
Yeah,
We got there.
yeah.
We got to the fact that now as a man, you can look back at your childhood and understand and realize the sort of balanced approach that your mom had to this, and the understanding that there needed to be guardrails. That Madison and I talked about the fact that she in high school skipped so much class that she had to go to continuing ed. And in continuing ed, now at the age of 16 or 17, they took her phone every day. She did not have access to her phone for the 8 hours she was in school. And she says at this point, that's one of the best things that could possibly have happened to her, because
I can imagine.
She now at 25 does not feel as chained to her phone as her peers.
Yeah.
Based on that experience.
Well, yeah.
I mean, research is certainly emerging that the later your kid gets on the internet, gets social media, gets smart mobile technology, the more well-established they are in the practical world, being able to, reason deductively. Right. And all the rest of those things that I think are quite important, in my opinion, because they make you able to deal with the world as it is. Because the world as it stands is still run by people of my generation. Right. So the expectations are still those of people of my generation. We expect you to be able to deal with conflict, to, meet deadlines, to be on time, to take responsibility for your actions, right? All of these things that we learned that, ironically, as a generation, we didn't do so well teaching our children, ironically. Yeah. We'll get to that on another day. And I'll say that is my opinion. That is my opinion based on running hundreds and hundreds of children through my classrooms and respecting them enough so that they could trust and express themselves openly with me, and so that I could understand their experiences better.
Can I say
it again?
I just remembered this.
What's that?
And it's interesting that I didn't think about this. I would think that my access to technology was like less.
Yeah.
But it actually, because I'm forgetting like computers, I'm forgetting computers. There were not really any guardrails with respect to my usage of a computer when I grew up. But maybe again, the difference goes back to the thing that Madison had mentioned about your ability to like get away. When I was on the computer, it would be like somewhere where somebody else could have access to me, really.
Right.
Because we had like a shared. It was a laptop, but it was like for the house.
And she could monitor it.
Yeah, she really wasn't.
To a certain extent. Well, but whether she was or not,
I knew that she could.
You as a child knew that she had access to the same machine you were using.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that
you might have assumed at the time that she would be smarter than you at using it because she's a grown up. Right?
I would think that there would be a way for her to figure something out.
Right.
I think that, it's an interesting one. But also I think about the dynamic of technology in the home versus outside the home, and how for me, a computer and my usage of it wasn't dissimilar from a television. I wasn't logging into social media on my computer.
A machine that was in a fixed place in your house.
It wasn't fixed, but I was only using it. I wasn't taking the laptop like to my room, for example.
To your room, right.
It
was in common spaces.
Exactly.
Right.
But I think that like the usage of it wasn't dissimilar from television, in that I'm not logging into social profiles or forums.
Right.
So I think
Right.
more than just the technology itself, it's what you're doing on it and how you're using it, how you're
Yeah.
permitted to use it as from parent to child, and the child's sense of their parents' control over that.
Right.
You know, it becomes much easier if I have a phone and it's separate from my parents' phone, and I have my
Yeah.
phone and I'm outside the house
Or
to do
you're in your
things,
room with it
or in my room on my phone to do
at
things with that
11:30 at night.
phone, you
Yeah.
know? So it's a, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think that you're giving me a lot to think about with respect to how I was raised with technology and how I might, with things that I would do similar versus differently. I think I would
Yeah.
like extend certain things and prohibit other things sooner. Like I would let them use it. I'd probably be inclined, like, you could use your computer, might be a family computer, but I was let on social media earlier, and I just don't know that, even though I was cool with it, and my kids might not be like me, although
Yeah.
I'd be the ones raising them.
And you could see how, because you can see amongst your peers the effect that social media had on people you were around, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah.
there's more, I think there's more somebody could do, you know, being a parent, especially as our generation gets older, like how tapped in we would be,
Right.
you know, the tools that we would have by comparison to connect with our children.
Correct. That's a whole other universe,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we don't have as generations Xers and boomers the same point of reference
Similar.
of
Yeah.
being digitally native. Or
Yeah.
even with millennials, if you're in your early 20s when all of this stuff comes out, you're still a kid, you know. And
Mm.
it's, I mean, when I see my mother, who is a baby boomer, and my father get taken away by technology in certain ways that I don't,
Yeah.
right? um
Yeah.
I mean, I could only imagine what that is like for somebody who was 15 when they got their first mobile phone, or 20 when they got their first mobile phone, much less 8, 9, 7 months when they get their first iPad. And that loops back around to the reality thing. And the reality thing is what keeps me from being judgmental about it,
Mm.
you know, because I can see that in your world this is the way things are. You
Mm.
know, I can see that if you have a brick phone in 2012, when many of the kids around you have iPhones, what the social ramifications of that are.
Yeah. I remember like
What the
2011,
emotional content. Uh-huh. Say
not
it again.
10, 11,
Uh-huh.
2010, 2011.
Right.
Folks are on Facebook. I was like, I'm not going to get on Facebook. She's like, fuck no.
Yeah.
No. She didn't say fuck. She
Yeah.
wasn't cussing at the time. But that was definitely like, it was like a hard, like, what? You
But
thought,
yeah.
no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, like, yeah, like, whoa, why would that be permissible? You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
I think for a lot of parents, they're balancing wanting to protect their children while also like not depriving them of
Correct.
things relevant to their social realities,
Correct.
and also
Correct.
not depriving them from being able to be savvy with certain things. Because
Correct.
as you pointed out, I mean, there are a lot of ways in which generations older than me, yours, and older than yours can get played by social media, the internet, in ways that I could never, in ways that Gen Alpha could never.
Correct.
But there's this dance that you don't want to, which I think, you know, I think at a certain, to a certain extent, it's just like, don't let your kid control your emotionality like that. Like, the sense that you would feel guilty that your child can't have the same quote unquote level of fun,
Yeah.
or can't connect in
Yeah.
the same way. I think that undermines their ability to just adapt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Well, I mean,
understand that not everybody's going to have the same sort of experiences. And ultimately, when the costs I see of a child being on social media are so much greater
yeah.
than them not having one subject to talk about with their friends, or
Right.
some group of kids picking on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would rather my kid not be talking to strange adults, you
Yeah.
know?
And the contrast to that, to that, is it's extremely difficult to not succumb to the pressure,
Oh, for sure.
you know, because, you know, honestly, high school never really ends. When you're taking your kid to school and there are 1,700 kids in that school,
Hmm.
and your kid is one of a 1% of kids in that school
Yeah.
who is socially different because they
Mm-hmm.
don't own a certain technology or a certain machine or whatever, or have a certain toy.
Yeah.
That is a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure on a parent,
And a
right?
kid.
So it takes yeah, on the kid, yes, but on the parent, tenfold,
What makes you say that? I want to understand. I want to make sure I'm understanding that right.
because of the relationship of having to protect and keep another human being alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely different buy-in.
Yeah.
Because you have you have your own buy-in as a human being trying to protect another human being, and then you have the layer of this heightened
Yeah.
awareness of what that little human being is going through,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and you don't want any harm for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that pressure is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And you're correct that not giving them a smartphone at 3 is a better proposition than them suffering because of that smartphone at 16,
Yeah.
right?
There's levels to it. Yeah.
There's levels to it, and it's hard. It's all
It's
hard.
nuanced, and it's nuanced
It's
and it's
so nuanced.
particular.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's so nuanced, and
I have no
there's and
prescription for like the general. I'm not even a parent. Like I have no, because it's going to be so variable, and they're
yeah,
totally different
yeah,
social environments based on where you're growing up, what
yes,
school your kid's going to.
yes,
So many things to
yes.
consider. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the only thing that we know almost for certain is that giving your child access to the internet and mobile technology before the age of 12
Hmm. Hmm.
can be incredibly detrimental and incredibly
Mm-hmm.
harmful. I think, and I think it might be 15. On the other side of that coin is, how do you fucking do that?
How do you do that? Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you execute that in the pressure of the world? You have to be incredibly strong, incredibly resilient, and incredibly determined to protect your child in that way. And the truth is, like you said before, we haven't lived with it long enough to really understand the ramifications. We haven't started understanding ramifications until right now.
What do you think about these bans on smartphones in schools in the United States?
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great. In my personal opinion, I got no trouble with that,
Mm-hmm.
because there are so many bad things that happen in school based on people's smartphone use.
Jesus.
So many
Yeah.
bad things that would simply not happen. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of those back in the day things, right? Back in the day, if I wanted to bully somebody in school, that only went as far as that school. It might only go as far as that friend group, just a handful of humans. Now I bully somebody through a smartphone. It's this school of 1,900 kids. It's the next high school of 2,000 kids. It's that high school of 2,400 kids, whatever it is.
And it's you in
And
your own home.
it ripples out into their lives for the long term, because depending on who posts what where, that
Mm-hmm.
could follow you around for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And likely the emotional and psychological ramifications in your life right now as a teen or as a preteen could definitely affect your orientation, your psychological psyche orientation for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Whereas the arguments of it's dangerous because I can't get in touch with my kids, never in the history of school before 2007 was that even a thought. Because if there's an emergency in school, the school will contact you. We started to get this impulse to be in touch with our kids every minute of the day, including when we know better, to be contacting them or texting them during class. People don't think that's a problem, but that's a problem. It raises anxiety for the kid in a lot of ways. I don't necessarily want to be contacted by my parents every minute of the day. And I don't want my parents blowing a gasket because they tried to contact me for the 10th time when they contacted me 9 times and I can't answer, and now they're flipping out because they can't get in touch with me. Or they call me from the curb when they're coming to pick me up and I don't answer, so they blow a gasket, and I know that when I get to the car, they will have blown a gasket because they couldn't get in touch with me. It's all this very strange, perpetual sort of digitally cannibalistic cycle.
I think that the phone or the ban on phones in schools presents like a macro, just like a way to blanket solve a lot of things. Because when you talk about this and the point about like parents wanting to get in touch with their kids,
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that's important. But I think that the way that it's could be misused is very inappropriate as well, you know?
I don't want you, as a teacher, I don't want you calling your kid in the middle of school or texting your kid in the middle of school to find out what they want to have for dinner
Yeah, that's yeah.
or
Yeah.
what color
Yeah.
Nikes they want.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, because
Yeah.
eventually you cannot control the avalanche of the reasons you're going to get in touch with your kid all the time.
I think that becomes to the point of how variable and how personal, idiosyncratic, how one-to-one things are. It's like when I growing up in high school, middle school, smartphone, or even just before smartphones, and I had a phone. I think my first phone was like 9 or 10. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
Nokia brick.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was like our first overnight school trip. And overnight school trips, they have this thing, or they had the thing where it was like, make sure they don't bring their phones, or if they bring their phones, we're gonna collect them.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother's like, "You're not taking my kid's phone from him. You're not doing that." She was adamant any sort of trip that I went on that I would have access to my phone because the way that we are, like it's not a source for her to be pestering me. It's not a source for her to check in daily. It's literally like I don't text my mom often,
Right.
and
Right.
and historically it's never been a thing because the way that she uses technology, the way that I was raised to use technology, and the way that I was raised at least to communicate with her, it's like the phone, the purpose of the phone and that argument about why it's important for kids to have phones is in the case of emergencies. She's
Right.
not texting me to talk to me. You know what I mean? She's not texting me just to, there is no constant pulse. She'll get a message if I'm in danger, or I'll
Right.
get a message if she's in, or she needs me to do, if it's pertinent, that's when the messages will occur. Now that we're older, now that I'm older, it's like, we text more for whatever reasons, right? Just
Right.
to
Right.
send a video, but that becomes very, very personal. And it makes me think for myself in the way that I might raise children. It's like, yeah, I'd probably give them their phone. I'd want them to have their technology. I wasn't thinking about this when I asked the question about what you thought about school bans,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that the sort of relationship that I would have with my child,
Mm-hmm.
I would want them to have access to their phone. But generally, to your point, there's so much that could go wrong, and there's so much that I think that the school bans are solving for that are
Right.
good. And it puts everybody on the same playing field too socially, at least with respect to technology.
The intention
Hmm.
for the phone to be for emergencies
Mm-hmm.
in most cases is not the practice.
Yeah. Yeah. 1000%.
So from an educational standpoint, from a school standpoint, you need to and nobody hate me for saying this, nobody send me comments. I'm just using this as a turn of phrase because it's important. Um, you need to be able to guide the herd,
Mm.
right? At the same time that you nurture the individual.
Yeah.
Because most of the time you're dealing with, I mean, in the school that we were in together, there were tens of kids. You're dealing with hundreds of children in the same environment.
Yeah.
You have to be able to factor in the greatest common denominator.
Yeah, for sure. There's
when it
different
comes
decision
to
making.
when it comes to things
Yeah.
like that.
It's a different
So
calculus.
if a parent were to come to me when I was teaching and say, we only use the phone for emergencies, therefore my child should have, I would have to counter by saying, unfortunately, the rest of the school population is not that way.
Mm.
And if we make an exception for your child, the next set of parents are going to say, my kid needs to have but they're going to be contacting their kid every 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I get the school
Distracting,
rule. Yeah,
distracting, not
1000%.
distracting not only their child, but distracting other children as well.
Yeah, I get the rule in
So,
the macro for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And
No, it's
at that
interesting.
point,
Again, it's not
it's
either or.
definitely
It's and.
and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super fascinating.
It's so fascinating. You answered that question about what would you do different? Would you do anything different with your kids?
It'd be like the same but adapted.
Let's close with this. What do you recognize in your current life that is applied from your learning in that class?
What do I recognize from my current life that's applied from my iWorld? the why,
Yeah.
keeping in mind just having a certain level of thoughtfulness about the choices that I make with respect to technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in a lot of ways it was cultivated and just facilitated in the way that I was raised.
Right.
But then come time for me to start making my own choices, my iWorld had a lot to do with how I just frame my thinking around, what sort of technology am I gonna adopt? Why am I gonna adopt it? What's the reason? Is it serving me? In a lot of ways now, the way that I use technology is very like, and I'm very like you. I'm very pro technology. I remember taking the class because like I was just a fan of technology.
Yeah, yeah,
Even
yeah, yeah.
still, I have a group chat like we talk about tech. Like I'm very into it. You know, would watch like smartphone reviews all the time. Like just keep up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to me, I'm very particular about the way I'm very curatorial about the way that I use technology and the way that what role it plays in my life. If I have a given technology for a certain function and it starts to not serve that purpose, or I view it as being maladaptive in whatever way, I have a level of awareness to catch it and cut it and then bring it back in if it serves a different purpose, or if I learn to use it in a different way. I'm not keen to just continue to consume more and more technology and integrate technology more and more into my life. It has to
Have a
have
purpose.
a very clear like why, and it doesn't have to be big, really. Like it doesn't have to
Right.
be like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to fulfill some greater, there's no morality to it.
It's got to be clear.
I could be on my screen all day. Was it for something productive? Was it not? Forget productive. Was it for something? Was it bad? Was it bad to
Right.
me?
Right.
Did it
Right.
did it add or
Right.
detract from what I was using it for?
Right. Right.
And it
Yeah.
it could just be a level of thoughtfulness about it.
Yeah.
Thinking about computer screen time versus phone screen time. I'm on my computer way more than I'm on my phone. I would
Right.
think somebody picked up my phone, they'd be like, "Oh, they're like not on the internet at all." I'm on the internet all the fucking time. you know?
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah,
But in the
from my
way that I'm
past view.
using, but in the way that I'm using the technology, it's much more deliberate. I don't have a sort of attachment to. I'll like routinely like get rid of my social media and then get them back after a period of time.
Right.
And part of that's like getting off social media in general because I'm on Reels too much, or because I just want to reset my algorithm, or I don't like the fact this will be a simple thing. Like I don't like the fact the amount of spoilers that I encounter on the internet
Oh yeah.
for different
Yeah.
media that I consume. Like that
Yeah.
could be reason enough where I'm like, yeah, okay, fuck Instagram. I'm off this. I'm
Yeah.
off this. And that's like trivial. It's not because I'm protecting myself from some sort of mental harm.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
It's
No.
like,
No. Yeah.
you
I mean,
know,
I think it's clarity. I think
it's clarity. It's
It comes down to it comes down to that very simple thing, choice. It comes down to what I choose deliberately.
yeah.
Even if I'm choosing to do something that I consider not productive or whatever, I chose it, and I know I chose it, and I can unchoose it when I decide.
I think the greater conversation becomes around what we're choosing and why we're choosing it. And then it's not a technology dependent thing. It's more so like an individual person's frame of reference or honesty with how they're making choices in general.
Yes.
We assign the morality to the technology, and if there's morality to be assigned, I think it's more so to the choice
Yes.
being made,
The human factor. Yes. Absolutely. That's you just made my point for me. Fantastic. Odduachi, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course.
I cannot tell you how happy I am that you were here. I would like to invite you to come back.
Of course.
This subject is broad and deep and splinters like crazy, so I'm sure that there's other stuff that we can talk about, and I would love to have you back. Besides having you back for the 4th installment of Then to Now, which will be a conversation with myself, Odduachi, Madison, and Justin from the Then to Now arc. So
cool.
It'll be a reunion, my iWorld reunion, which I'm very excited about. I would like to thank you for joining me in Pursuit of Signal, a deep dive into the social impacts of technology on our everyday lives. It has been a pleasure. I'm glad you were here. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Great to man, a blast from the past. This is very fun. I always enjoy having these conversations with you.
It's been so great to
Um,
have you.
yeah, I look forward to the next one for sure.